killed her. Shall we start? Hi, I'm Lady Rain. This is the Reader's Nook. We are reading The Dead Zone. We've gotten to chapter 16. We read a few parts of that yesterday, and today we're going to start with part 4. So Johnny's gotten to his meeting, and had a meeting at the school. He's been getting some letters because the guy that didn't get what he wanted decided to write a bad review or a bad article. At least it's what they're thinking. So we are on part 4 of chapter 16. You know, maybe that's what the problem is, but I'm going to warm up my room anyway. Maybe I won't yawn if I don't have the heat on me. It seemed to work yesterday. We'll see if it works today. It's good to see everybody. I'm glad y'all could make it. So, shall we begin? The Dead Zone, chapter 16, part 4. Smith? The telephone voice asked. John Smith? Yes. It wasn't a voice he knew, or a wrong number. That made it something of a puzzle since his father had had the phone unlisted about 3 months ago. This was December 17th, and their tree stood in the corner of the living room, its base firmly wedged into the old tree stand Herb had made when Johnny was just a kid. Outside it was snowing. My name is Bannerman, Sheriff George Bannerman, from Castle Rock. He cleared his throat. I've got well, I suppose you'd say I've got a proposal for you. How did you get this number? Bannerman cleared his throat again. Well, I could have gotten it from the phone company, I suppose, it being police business. But actually, I got it from a friend of yours, doctor by the name of Wezek. Sam Wezek gave you my number? That's right. Johnny sat down in the phone nook, utterly perplexed. Now the name Bannerman meant something to him. He had come across the name in a Sunday's supplement article about only recently. He was a sheriff of Castle County, which was considered part of Pinal in the Lakes region. Castle Rock was the county seat, about 30 miles from Norway and 20 miles from Bridgeton. Police business, he repeated. Well, I guess you'd say so. I was wondering if maybe the two of us could get together for a cup of coffee. It involves Sam? No, Dr. Wezek has nothing to do with it. Bannerman said. He gave me a call and mentioned your name. That was, a month ago, at least. To be frank, I thought he was nuts, but now we're just about at our wits' end. About what, Mr. Sheriff Bannerman? I don't understand what you're talking about. It'd really be a lot better if we could get together for coffee, Bannerman said. Maybe this evening? There's a place called John's on the main drag in Bridgeton, sort of halfway between your town and mine. No, I'm sorry, Johnny said. I'd have to know what it was about. And how come Sam never called me? Bannerman sighed. I guess you're a man who doesn't read the papers, he said. But that wasn't true. He had read the papers compulsively since he had regained consciousness, trying to pick up on the things he had missed. And he had seen Bannerman's name just recently. Sure, because Bannerman was in a pretty hot seat. He was a man in charge of. Johnny held the phone away from his ear and looked at it with sudden understanding. He looked at it the way a man might look at a snake he had just realized is poisonous. Mr. Smith. It squawked tinnily. Hello, Mr. Smith? I'm here, Johnny said, putting the phone back to his ear. He was conscious of a dull anger at Sam Wezek. Sam, who had told him to keep his head down only this summer, and then had turned around and given the local yokel sheriff an earful behind John's back. It's that strangling business, isn't it? Bannerman hesitated a long time, and then he said, Could we talk, Mr. Smith? No, absolutely not. The dull anger had ignited into sudden fury. Fury and something else. He was scared. Mr. Smith, it's important today. No, I want to be left alone. Besides, don't you read the goddamn Inside View? I'm a fake anyway. Dr. Wezek said. He had no business saying anything, John shouted. He was shaking all over. Goodbye. He slammed the phone into its cradle and got out of the phone nook quickly, as if it would prevent it from ringing again. He could feel a headache beginning in his temples. Dull drill bits. Maybe I should call his mother out there in California, he thought. Tell her where her little Sunny Buns is. Tell her to get in touch, tit for tat. Instead, he hunted in the address book for a in the phone table drawer, found Sam's office number in Bangor, and called it. As soon as it rang once on the other end, he hung up, scared again. Why had Sam done that to him? God damn it, why? He found himself looking at the Christmas tree. Same old decorations. They had dragged them down from the attic again, and taken them out of their tissue paper cradles again, and hung them up again. It was 2 evenings ago. It was a funny thing about Christmas decorations. There weren't many things that remained intact year after year as a person grew up. Not many lines of continuity, not many physical objects that could easily serve both the states of childhood and adulthood. Your kid clothes were handed down or packed off to the Salvation Army. Your Donald Duck watch sprang its mainspring. Your Red Ryder cowboy boots wore out. The wallet you made in your first camp handicrafts class got replaced by a Lord Buxton. And you traded your red wagon and your bike for more adult toys, a car, tennis rack, maybe one of those new TV hockey games. There were only a few things you could hang on to. A few books, maybe. Why do I have to itch? I have meds that make me itch. It sucks. And a lucky coin, or a stamp collection that had been preserved and improved upon. Add that to the Christmas tree ornaments in your parents' house. The same chipped angels year after year. The same tinsel star on top. The tough surviving platoon of what had once been an entire battalion of glass bulbs. And we never forget the honored dead, he thought. This one died as a result of the baby's clutching hand. This one slipped as Dad was putting it on, crashed to the floor. The red one with the Star of Bethlehem painted on it was simply and mysteriously broken one year, when you took them down from the attic. And I cried. The tree stand itself. But sometimes, Johnny thought, absently massaging his temples, it seemed that it would be better, more merciful, if you lost touch with even these last vestiges of childhood. You could never discover the books that had first turned you on in quite the same way. The lucky coin had not protected you from any of the ordinary whips and scorns and scrapes of an ordinary life. And when you looked at the ornaments, you remembered that there had once been a mother in the place to direct the tree trimming operation. Always ready and willing to piss you off by saying a little higher or a little lower, or I think you've got too much tinsel on that left side, dear. You looked at the ornaments and remembered that just the two of you have been around to put them up this year. Just the two of you, because your mother went crazy and then she died. But the fragile Christmas tree ornaments are still here, still hanging around to decorate another tree taken from the small back wood lot. And didn't they say more people committed suicide around Christmas than any other time of the year? By God, it's no wonder. What a power God has given you, Johnny. Sure, that's right. God's a real prince. He knocked me through the windshield of a cab, broke my legs, and spent 5 years or so in a coma, and 3 people died. The girl I loved... The girl I loved got married. She had a son who would have been mine by a lawyer who's breaking his ass to get to Washington so he can help run the big electric train set. If I'm on my feet for more than a couple of hours at a time, it feels like somebody took a long splinter and rammed it straight up my leg to my balls. God's a real sport. He's such a sport that he fixed up a funny comic opera world where a bunch of glass Christmas tree globes would outlive you. Neat world, and really first-class God in charge of it. He must have been on our side during Vietnam, because that's the way he'd been running things ever since time began. "Here's a job for you, Johnny. Bailing some half-assed county cop out of a jam so he could get reelected next year." Kristen's gonna help. Do you work? Do you work? All right.
I work with Nick today.
We use them every day. We wash them every day. Don't run from him, Johnny. Don't hide away in a cave. He rubbed his temples. Outside, the wind was rising. He hoped Dad would be careful coming home from work. Johnny got up and pulled on a heavy sweatshirt. He went out into the shed, watched his breath frost the air ahead of him. To the left was a large pile of wood he had split in the autumn just past, all of it cut into neat stove lengths. Next to it was a box of kindling, and beside it was a stack of old newspapers. He squatted down and began to thumb through them. His hands went numb quickly, and he kept going, and eventually came to the one he was looking for, the Sunday paper from 3 weeks ago. He took it into the house, slapped it down on the kitchen table, and began to root through it. He found the article he was looking for in the features section and sat down to reread it. The article was accompanied by several photos, one of them showing an old woman locking a door, another showing a police car cruising a nearly deserted street, two others showing a couple of businesses that were nearly deserted. The headline read, "The hunt for the Castle Rock Strangler goes on and on." 5 years ago, according to the story, a young woman named Alma Pritchett, who worked at the local restaurant, had been raped and strangled on her way home from work. A joint investigation of and crime had been conducted by the state's Attorney General's office and the Castle Rock Sheriff's Department. The result had been a total 0. A year later, an elderly woman, also raped and strangled, had been discovered in her tiny third-floor apartment on Carbine Street in Castle Rock. A month later, the killer had struck again. This time, the victim had been a bright young junior high school girl. There had been a more intensive investigation. The investigative facilities of the FBI had been utilized, all to no result. The following November, Sheriff Carl M. Kelso, who had been the county's chief law officer since approximately the days of the Civil War, had been voted out, and George Bannerman had been voted in, largely on an aggressive campaign to catch the Castle Rock Strangler. 2 years passed. The strangler had not been apprehended, but no further murders occurred either. Then last January, the body of a 17-year-old Carol Dunbarger had been found by 2 small boys. The Dunbarger girl had been reported as a missing person by her parents. She had been in and out of trouble at Castle Rock High School, where she had a record of chronic tardiness. Are you using the microwave? All right, there you go. Record of chronic tardiness and truancy. She had been busted twice for shoplifting and had run away once before, getting as far as Boston. Both Bannerman and the state police assumed she had been thumbing a ride, and the killer had picked her up. A midwinter thaw had uncovered her body near Strimmer's Brook, where 2 small boys had found it. The state medical examiner said she had been dead about 2 months. Then this November 2nd, there had been yet another murder. The victim was a well-liked Castle Rock grammar school teacher named Etta Ringgold. She was a lifetime member of the local Methodist Church, holder of an MBS in elementary education, and prominent in local charities. She had been fond of the works of Robert Browning, and her body had been found stuffed into a culvert that ran beneath an unpaved secondary road. Those are those tunnels that go underneath driveways. That's what a culvert is. The uproar over the murder of Miss Ringgold had rumpled over all of northern New England. Comparisons to Albert DeSalvo, the Boston Strangler, were made. Comparisons that did nothing to pour oil in the troubled waters. A culvert doesn't necessarily go under a driveway, but that was just an example of what a culvert is. Anything that goes underneath the road with a tunnel, that's a culvert. I know I hit one when I was 19. Sucked. Told my dad 73 Chevy Impala. Maybe it was a 72, but yeah, it's an old car. It was so nice. And I busted the axle in half. Then the axles went all the way across, split it right in half. Now the axles are separate. Apparently. I don't know. Alright, let's keep going. William Loeb's, union leader in not-so-distant Manchester, New Hampshire, had published a helpful editorial titled The Do-Nothing Cops in Our Sister State. This Sunday supplement article, now nearly 6 weeks old, and smelling pungently of shed and wood box, quoted 2 local psychiatrists who had been perfectly happy to blue sky the situation as long as their names weren't printed. One of them mentioned a peculiar sexual aberration, the urge to commit some violent act at the moment of orgasm. Nice, Johnny thought, grimacing. He strangled them to death as he came. His headache. I don't know, try the sink. If it's not in the sink, try the drawer. He strangled them to death as he came. His headache was getting worse all the time. The other shrink pointed out the fact that all 5 murders had been committed in late fall and early winter. And while the manic-depressive personality didn't conform to any one set pattern, it was fairly common for such a person to have mood swings closely paralleling the change of the season. He might have a low lasting from mid-April until the end of August, and then begin to climb, peaking. The bottom of my nose itches. Not inside, the outside. And then began to climb, peaking at around the time of the murders. During the manic or up state, the person in question was apt to be sexually highly sexed, active, daring, and optimistic. Didn't see Holly's back, huh? Yes, I did. It's an allergy, please. What caused the allergy for her? The seasonal change. It's fall. She's allergic to stuff outside, and then she itches, and that's what happens. It's called a hot spot. He would be likely to believe the police unable to catch him. The unnamed psychiatrist had finished. The article concluded by saying that so far the person in question had been right. Johnny put the paper down, glanced at the clock, and saw his father should be home almost any time, unless the snow was holding him up. He took the old newspaper up to the wood stove and poked it into the firebox. Not my business, goddamn Sam Wozniak anyway. Don't hide away in a cave, Johnny. He wasn't hiding away in a cave. That wasn't it at all. It just so happened that he'd been a fairly tough What? Can I make my own pizza? I don't know what you're going to make it on. I guess on bread. No, I'm thinking about the crust for you. Oh, if there's crust left, then yes. But make one, and you don't pile it high. You keep it flat. You keep it flat. You don't need to pile it high with cheese. It's not a taco. It's a pizza. And if you don't top it right, it's not going to cook. Understand? Does it work in the microwave? I don't know. Let's find out. Yeah. There you go. It just so happened that he'd had a fairly tough break. Losing a big chunk of your life, that qualified you for tough break status, didn't it? And all the self-pity you can guzzle. Fuck you, he murmured to himself. He went to the window and looked out. Nothing to see but snow falling in heavy, wind-driven lines. He hoped Dad was being careful, but he also hoped his father would show up soon and put an end to this useless rat run of introspection. He went over to the telephone again and stood there, undecided. Self-pity or not, he had lost a goodish chunk of his life. His prime, if you wanted to put it that way. He had worked hard to get back. Didn't he deserve some ordinary privacy? Didn't he have a right to what he had just been thinking of a few minutes ago, an ordinary life? There's no such thing, my man. Phoebe, get down.
What do you want on it? And they air fryer at 400 degrees for
Is anybody using the microwave?
5 minutes. But doesn't tell me to put it in the air fryer.
Mm-hmm. It cooks better. Tristan, are you busy?
Maybe. What do you want me to do?
Would you be willing to make me a cup of tea?
Well, things boiling right now. I'll just put the water after they're done with their cocoa.
All right.
Wait a minute.
It's not on. Well, that would explain it.
I turned it up because it was going to keep ordering for you.
Watch your mouth. The life of me.
Okay, who's hungry?
Oh, my Lord.
I mean, you're about to make a pizza. Of course you're fucking hungry.
Watch your mouth.
With eggs.
This is chaos in the morning.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, you're
Can we
streaming
please
right
watch our mouths? Thank you. And please try not to be loud. I was going to say high voice, but loud.
I would love to be high right now.
I would love to be able to continue reading. Here's a commercial break from our sponsors.
I'm trying to think of a clever response to that. Anyway, does anybody want any eggs or omelets or anything?
Maybe for dinner. Maybe for lunch. We're not using the sausage till your sister says so.
Now, how do you make an omelet? It might be tricky.
Scrambled eggs.
And then you leave it on the pan flat until the top starts to go solid.
And you have to keep it on low. Now, can I please have a cup of tea?
Are you guys going to make your cocoa?
Yeah.
All right, let's continue. There's no such thing, my man, as an ordinary life. Maybe not, but there sure was such a thing as an abnormal life. That thing at Cole's farm.
You remember Shazam? First one and the second one?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be on Netflix.
Okay.
On cinema.
Nick, I am reading on live. If it can wait till after, please do it. If not, then talk to me, because you're going to interrupt me anyway. My kids are up. It's morning, and this is what happens. So, feeling people's clothes and suddenly knowing their little dreads, small secrets, petty triumphs, that was abnormal. It wasn't a talent. It was a curse. Suppose he did meet this sheriff. There was no guarantee he could tell him a thing. And suppose he could. Just suppose he could hand him his killer on a silver platter. It would be the hospital press conference all over again. A three-ring circus raised to the grisly power. A little song began to run maddeningly through his aching head. Little more.
Who's placing the...
Can we please turn the voice down? Thank you. Little more than a jingle already. Are we talking about the fridge? That's mine. Why? Did you start making yours?
No.
Did you start?
I was about to use one of those things, but never mind.
What are you talking about?
Where's the...
What are you talking about, Nick?
Nick, get over here.
No. Nick, chill.
Darn it, I don't have a spatula.
All right. Is there any sausage left?
Yeah, there should be some.
Nick, when you're done, come get the sausage.
There's a pepperoni.
Thank you. There. Did you put them?
No.
Did we put them in the? Yeah, I was gonna say there's some in the fridge. If there's none in the fridge, then there's still 2 packages. A little song began to maddeningly to run maddeningly through his aching head. Little more than a jingle, really. A Sunday school song from his early childhood. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, 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 let it shine. He picked up the phone and dialed Wezek's office number. Safe enough now, after 5. Wezek would have gone home, and big deal neurologists didn't list their home phones. The phone rang 6 or 7 times, and Johnny was going to put it down when it was answered, and Sam himself said, "Hi, hello, Sam? John Smith?" The pleasure in Sam's voice was unmistakable. But was there an undercurrent of unease in it? "Yeah, it's me." "How do you like the snow?" Wezek said, maybe a little too heartily. "Is it snowing where you are?" "It's snowing. Just started here about an hour ago, they say." "John? Is it the sheriff? Is that why you sound so cold?" "Well, he called me," Johnny said. "And I've been sort of wondering what happened. Why you gave him my name. Why didn't you call me and say you had? And why you didn't call me first? Ask if you could." Wezek sighed. "Johnny, I could maybe give you a lie, but that would be no good. I didn't ask you first because I was afraid you would say no. And I didn't tell you I'd done it afterward because Sheriff laughed at me. When someone laughs at one of my suggestions, I assume, nah, that was a suggestion is not going to be taken." John rubbed at one aching temple with his free hand and closed his eyes. "But why, Sam? You know how I feel about it. You were the one who told me to keep my head down and let it blow over. You told me that yourself." "It was the piece in the paper," Sam said. "I said to myself, Johnny lives down that way. And I said to myself, 5 dead women, 5. His voice was slow, halting, and embarrassed. It made Johnny feel much worse to hear Sam sounding like this. He wished he hadn't called. 2 of them teenage girls, a young mother, a teacher of young children who loved Browning. All of it so corny, nah? So corny, I suppose they would never make a movie or a TV show out of it. But nonetheless, it was the teacher I thought about the most, stuffed in a culvert like a bag of garbage. "You had no goddamn right to bring me into your guilt fantasies," John said thickly. "No, perhaps not. No, perhaps about it. Johnny, are you all right? You sound..." "I'm fine," Johnny shouted. "You don't sound fine." "I've got a shitter of a headache. Is that so surprising? I wish to Christ you'd left us alone. When I told you about your mother, you didn't call because you said, I said some things are better lost than found. But that was not always true. That is not always true, Johnny.
It's dangerous to go alone. Take this.
What did you put in there?"
Not cyanide?
"What did you put in here? I asked for tea."
There's tea. Cream.
Why did you put cream in my tea?"
Yeah. You've never put milk in a tea before?
"No, I don't drink it like that."
Well, try it.
"I have."
Try it.
"Tristan,
Drink it!
there's also something green in my tea."
I don't know what that is. That might be something that was on the cup.
"I don't want to drink this green thing that's in my tea."
I'm busy right now. There's other people down here. My food is burning and my fork is on fire.
"You made my tea French vanilla tea."
That's not fresh vanilla. It's almond milk.
It tastes like French vanilla.
Whoa.
This man, whoever he is, has a terribly disturbed personality. He may kill himself. I am sure that when he stopped for 2 years, the police thought he had. But a manic depressive sometimes has long, level periods. It is called a plateau of normality. and then goes back to the same mood swings. He may have killed himself after murdering the teacher last month, but if he hasn't, what then? He may kill another one, or two, or four, or... Stop it, Sam said. Why did Sheriff Bannerman call you? What made him change his mind? I don't know. I suppose the voters are after him. I'm sorry I called him, Johnny, and that this has upset you so. But even more, I am sorry that I did not call you and tell you what I had done. I was wrong. God knows you have a right to live your life quietly. Hearing his own thoughts echoed did not make him feel better. Instead, he felt more miserable and guilty than ever. All right, he said. It's okay, Sam. I'll not say anything to anyone again. I suppose that is like putting a new lock on a barn door after the horse thief. But it's all I can say. I was indiscreet. I'm a doctor. That's bad. All right, Johnny said again. He felt helpless, and the slow embarrassment with which Sam spoke made it worse. I'll see you soon. I'll be up in Cleves next month. Start teaching. I'll drop by. Good. Again, my sincerest apologies, John. Stop saying that. They said their goodbyes and Johnny hung up, wishing he hadn't called at all. Maybe he hadn't wanted Sam to agree so readily that what he had done was wrong. Maybe what he had really wanted Sam to say was, sure, I called him. I wanted you to get off your ass and do something. He wandered across to the window and looked out into the blowing darkness, stuffed into the culvert like a bag of garbage. God, how his head ached. Part 5. Herb got home half an hour later, took one look at Johnny's white face, and said, Headache? Yeah. Bad? Not too bad. We want to watch the national news, Herb said. Glad I got home in time. Bunch of people from NBC are over in Castle Rock this afternoon. Filming. That lady reporter you think is so pretty was there. Cassie Mackin. He blinked at the way Johnny turned on him. For a moment, it seemed that Johnny's face was all eyes, staring out at him and full of and nearly inhumane pain. Castle Rock? Another murder? Yeah, they found a little girl on the town common this morning. Saddest damn thing you ever heard of. I guess she had a pass to go across the common to the library for some project she was working on. She got to the library. She never got back. Johnny, you look terrible, boy. How old was she? Just 9, Herb said. A man who'd do a thing like that should be strung up by the balls. That's my view on it. 9, Johnny said, and sat down heartily. Stone the crows. Johnny, you sure you're feeling okay? You're white as paper. Fine. Turn on the news. Oh, they're redoing the steps. Okay, that's what that noise is. Shortly, John Chancellor was in front of him, bearing his nightly satchel of political aspirations. Fred Harris's campaign. Bless you? Ford Harrison's campaign was not catching much fire. Government edicts, the cities of America would just have to learn common budgetary sense, according to President Ford. International incidents, the nationwide strike in France, the Dow Jones up, and the heartwarming piece about a boy with cerebral palsy who was raising a 4-H cow. Did anybody look in the dishwasher?
It's clean.
It better be. It had better be.
I don't.
Maybe they cut it, Herb said. But after a commercial, Chancellor said, in Western Maine, bless you, there's a town full of frightened, angry people tonight. The town is Castle Rock, and over the last 5 years, there have been 5 nasty murders. 5 women, ranging in age from 71 to 14, have been raped and strangled. Today, there was a 6th murder in Castle Rock. and the victim was a 9-year-old girl. Catherine Mackin is in Castle Rock with the story.
Yeah, that's the point. Chaos is the
And I'm
one
trying
thing.
to read. I'm going to put my desk upstairs. And there she was, looking like a figment of a make-believe, carefully superimposed
Give me a second.
on a real setting. She was standing across from the town office building. The first of that afternoon's snow, which had developed into tonight's blizzard, was powdering the shoulders of her coat and her blonde hair. A sense... Can we not, please? Give me a second.
New tea?
Somebody else can drink that. I cannot drink it with cream.
I don't know why person thought cream.
Because he likes it that way, and unfortunately, I can't drink it that way. I might be English, but unfortunately, cream does not agree with me. Then you drink it, and you can have that green thing in it. Like a piece of grass or something. Might be spinach. And a heartwarming piece about a boy with cerebral palsy who was raising a 4-H cow. Now, that we actually passed that part. Do 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 do. Powder of snow. Got it. Okay, so snow's on her coat, shoulders of her coat, and her blonde hair. A sense of quiet mounting hysteria lies over this small New England mill town this afternoon, she began. The townspeople of Castle Rock had been nervous for a long time over the unknown person the local press calls the Castle Rock Strangler, or sometimes the November Killer. That nervousness... Why?
Because she's trying to steal Chris's food.
Come here. Sit. The nervousness has changed to terror. Put the gate up and close the other gate. Put the gate up and put her other... I'm putting her in here with me instead of the crate. She can at least run this way. The nervousness has changed to terror. No one here thinks that word is too strong. Following the discovery of Mary Kate Henderson's body on the town common, not far from the bandstand where the body of the November Killer's first victim, a waitress named Alma Fretchett, was discovered. A long panning shot of the town common, looking bleak and dead in the falling snow. This was replaced with a school photograph of Mary Kate Henderson, grinning brashly through a heavy set of braces. Her hair was a fine white blonde. Her dress was an electric blue. Most likely her best dress, Johnny thought sickly. Her mother put her into her best dress for her school photo. The report went on. Now they were recapitulating the past murders, but Johnny was on the phone, first to Directory Assistance and then to the Castle Rock town offices. He dialed slowly, his head thudding. Herb came out of the living room and looked at him curiously. "Who are you calling, son?" Johnny shook his head and listened to the phone ring on the other end. It was picked up. Castle County Sheriff's Office. Yes, I'd like to speak to Sheriff Bennerman, please. Could I have your name? John Smith, from Poland. Pownell. Hold, please. Johnny turned to look at the TV and saw Bannerman, as he had been that afternoon, huddled up in a heavy parka with county sheriff patches on the shoulders. He looked uncomfortable. Turn it down just a tad, please. And dogged as he fielded the reporter's questions. He was... Turn it down a bit, please. He heard me.
Yes.
Thank you. He was a broad-shouldered man with a big, sloping head capped with curly dark hair. The rimless glasses he wore looked strangely out of place, as spectacles always seemed to look out of place on very big men. We're following up a number of leads, Bannerman said. Hello, Mr. Smith? Bannerman said. Again, that queer sense of doubling. Bannerman was in two places at one time. 2 times at one time. If you wanted to look at it that way. Johnny felt an instant of helpless vertigo. He felt that way, God help him, the way you felt on one of those cheap carnival rides, the tilt-a-whirl or the crack-the-whip. Mr. Smith, are you there, man? Yes, I'm here, he swallowed. I've changed my mind. Good boy, I'm damn glad to hear it. I still may not be able to help you, you know. I know that, but no venture, no gain. Bannerman cleared his throat. They'd run me out of this town on a rail if they knew I was down to consulting a psychic. Johnny's face was touched with a ghost of a grin, and a discredited psychic at that. Do you know where John's in Bridgeton is? I can find it. Can you meet me there at 8 o'clock? Yes, I think so. Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right. He hung up. Herb was watching him closely. Behind him, the nightly news credits were rolling. He called you earlier, huh? Yeah, he did. San Wezek. Told him I might be able to help. You think you can? I don't know, Johnny said, but my headache feels a little better. He seems to get a headache whenever somebody's doing that with him. I apologize for the noise and interruptions. It's just the way my house is. I just wanted him to quiet down a little. He was 15 minutes late getting to John's restaurant in Bridgeton. It seemed to be the only business establishment on Brighton's main drag that was still open. The plows were falling behind the snow, and there were drifts across the road in several places. At the junction of Route 302 and 117, the blinker lights swayed back and forth in the screaming wind. A police cruiser with Castle County Sheriff in gold leaf on the door was parked in the front of John's. He parked behind it and went inside. Bannerman was sitting at the table in front of a cup of coffee and a bowl of chili. The TV had misled. He wasn't a big man. He was a huge man. Johnny walked over and introduced himself. Bannerman stood up and shook the offered hand, looking at Johnny's white, strained face and the way his thin body seemed to float inside his navy pea jacket. Bannerman's first thought was, this guy is sick. He's maybe not going to live too long. Only Johnny's eyes seemed to have any real life. They were a direct, piercing blue, and they fixed firmly on Bannerman's own with sharp, honest curiosity. And when their hands clasped, Bannerman felt a particular kind of surprise, a sensation he would later describe as a draining. It was a little like getting a shock from a bare electrical wire. Then it was gone. Glad you could come, Bannerman said. Coffee? Yes. How about a bowl of chili? They make great damn chili here. I'm not supposed to eat it because of my ulcer, but I do anyway. He saw the look of surprise on Johnny's face and smiled. I know it doesn't seem right. A great big guy like me having an ulcer, does it? I guess anyone can get one. You're damn tootin', Bannerman said. What changed your mind? It was the news, the little girl. Are you sure it was the same guy? It was the same guy, same MO, and the same sperm type. He watched Johnny's face as the waitress came over. Coffee? She asked. Tea, Johnny said. And bring him a bowl of chili, miss, Bannerman said. When the waitress had gone, he said, This doctor, he says that if you touch something, sometimes you get ideas about where it came from, who might have owned it, that sort of thing. Johnny smiled. Well, he said, I just shook your hand, and I know you've got an Irish setter named Rusty, and I know he's old and going blind, and you think it's time to put him to sleep, but you don't know how you'd explain it to your girl. Bannerman dropped his spoon back into his chili. Plop. He stared at Johnny with his mouth open. By God, John, he said. You got that from me just now. Johnny nodded. Bannerman shook his head and muttered, It's one thing to hear something like that, and another to... Doesn't it tire you out? Johnny looked at Bannerman, surprised. It was a question he had never been asked before. Yes, it does. But you knew it, I'll be damned. But look, Sheriff, George, just plain George. Okay, I'm Johnny, just Johnny. George, what I don't know about you would fill about 5 books. I don't know where you grew up, or where you went to police school, or who your friends are, or where you live. I know you've got a little girl, and her name's something like Kathy, but that's not quite it. I don't know what you did last week, or what beer you favor, or what your favorite TV program is. My daughter's name is Katrina, Bannerman said softly. She's 9 too. She was in Mary Kate's class. What I'm trying to say is that the knowing is sometimes a pretty limited thing because of the dead zone. Dead zone? It's like some of the signals don't conduct, Johnny said. I can never get streets or addresses. Numbers are hard, but sometimes come. The waitress returned with Johnny's tea and chili. He tasted the chili and nodded at Bannerman. You're right. It's good, especially on a night like this. Go to it, Bannerman said. Man, I love good chili. My old Sir hollers bloody hell at me about it. Fuck you all, sir, I say. Down the hatch. They were quiet for a moment. Johnny worked on his chili, and Bannerman watched him curiously. He supposed Smith could have found out he had a dog named Rusty. He even could have found out that Rusty was old and nearly blind. Take a step farther. And if he knew Katrina's name, he might have done that, something like Kathy. But that's not quite it. Routine, just to add the right touch of hesitant realism. But why? And none of that explained the queer, zapped feeling he'd gotten in his head when Smith touched his hand. It was a con. It was a damn good one. Outside, the wind gusted to a low shriek that seemed to rock the small building on its foundations. A flying veil of snow lashed the Pondicherry bowling. Pondicherry? That's great. Pondicherry is the name of a prince in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in the movie. Pondicherry bowling lanes across the street. Listen to that, Bannerman said. Supposed to keep up all night. Don't tell me the winter's getting milder. Oh, winters are getting milder. Have you got something, Johnny said. Something that belonged to the guy you're looking for? We think we might, Bannerman said, and then shook his head. But it's pretty thin. Tell me. Bannerman laid it out for him. The grammar school and the library sat facing each other across the town common. It was standard operating procedure to send students across when they needed a book for the project or report. The teacher gave them a pass, and the librarian initialed it before sending them back. Near the center of the common, the land dipped slightly. On the west side of the dip was the town bandstand. In the dip itself were 24 benches where people sat during bandstand concerts and football rallies in the fall. We think he just sat himself down and waited for a kid to come along. He would have been out of sight from both sides of the common. But the footpath runs along the north side of the dip, close to those benches. Bannerman shook his head slowly. What makes it worse is the fetch-it woman was killed right on the bandstand. I'm going to face a shitstorm about that at town meeting in March. That is, if I'm still around in March. Well, I can show them a memo I wrote to the town manager requesting adult crossing guards on the common during school hours. Not that it was this killer that I was worried about. Christ, no. Never in my wildest dreams did I think he'd go back to the same spot a second time. The town manager turned down the crossing guards. Not enough money, Bannerman said. Of course, he can spread the blame around to the town selectmen, and they'll try to spread it back on me, and the grass will grow up on Mary Kate Henderson's grave. And he paused for a moment, perhaps choked on what he was saying. Johnny gazed at his lowered head sympathetically. It might not have made any difference anyhow, Bannerman said, went on in a drier voice. Most of the crossing guards we use are women, and this fuck we're after doesn't seem to care how old or young they are. But you think he waited on one of those benches? Bannerman said. Bannerman did. They had found an even dozen fresh cigarette butts near the end of one of the benches, and 4 more behind the bandstand itself, along with an empty box. Marlboros, unfortunately. The second or third most popular brand in the country. The cellophane on the box had been dusted for prints, and it yielded none at all. None at all, Johnny said. That's a little funny, isn't it? Why do you say so? Well, you'd guess the killer was wearing gloves, even if he wasn't thinking about prints. It was cold out, but you'd think the guy that sold him the cigarettes. Bannerman grinned. You've got a head for this work, he said. But you're not a smoker. No, Johnny said. I used to smoke a few cigarettes when I was in college, but I lost the habit after my accident. A man keeps his cigarettes in his breast pocket. Take them out, get a cigarette, put it back in the pack. Put the pack back. If you're wearing gloves and not leaving fresh prints every time you get a butt, what you're doing is polishing the cellophane wrapper. Get it? And you missed one other thing, Johnny. Need me to tell you? Johnny thought it over and then said maybe the pack of cigarettes came out of a carton, and those cartons are packed by machine. That's it, Bannerman said. You are good at this. What about the tax stamp on the package? Maine, Bannerman said. So if the killer and the smoker are the same man, Johnny said thoughtfully. Bannerman shrugged. Sure. There's the technical possibility that they weren't, and I've tried to imagine who else would want to sit on a bench in the town common in a cold, cloudy winter morning long enough to smoke 12 or 16 cigarettes, and it came up blank. Johnny sipped his tea. None of the other kids that crossed saw anything? Nothing, Bannerman said. I've talked to every kid that had a library pass this morning. That's a lot weirder than a fingerprint business. Doesn't it strike you that way? It strikes me as goddamn scary. Look, the guy is sitting there, and what he's waiting for is one kid, one girl by herself. He can hear the kids as they come along, and each time he fades back behind the bandstand. Tracks, Johnny said. Not this morning. There was no snow cover this morning. There's frozen ground. So here's this crazy shitbag that ought to have his own testicles carved off and served to him for dinner. Here he is, skulking behind the bandstand. At 8:50 a.m., Peter Harrington and Melissa Loggins come along. School has been in session about 20 minutes at that time. When they're gone, he goes back to his bench. At 9:15, he fades back behind the bandstand again. This time, it's 2 little girls, Sarah Flaherty and Katrina Bannerman. Johnny set his mug of tea down with a bang. Bannerman had taken off his spectacles and was polishing them savagely. Your daughter crossed this morning? Jesus! Bannerman put his glasses on again. His face was dark and dull with fury. And he's afraid, Johnny saw. not afraid that the voters would turn him out, or that the union leader would publish another editorial about nitwit cops in Western Maine, but afraid because if his daughter had happened to go to the library alone this morning, my daughter, Bannerman agreed softly. I think she passed within 40 feet of that animal. You know what that makes me feel like? I can guess, Johnny said. No, I don't think you can. It makes me feel like I almost stepped into an empty elevator shaft. Like I passed up the mushrooms at dinner and someone else died of toadstool poisoning. And it makes me feel dirty. It makes me feel filthy. I guess maybe it also explains why I finally called you. I'd do anything right now to nail this guy. Anything at all. Outside, an orange plow loomed out of the snow like something from a horror movie. It parked and two men got out. They crossed the street to John's and sat at the counter. Johnny finished his tea. He no longer wanted the chili. This guy goes back to his bench, Bannerman resumed. But not for long. At 9:25, he hears the Harrington boy and the Longans girl come back from the library. He goes back behind the bandstand again. It must have been around 9:25 because the librarian signed them out at 9:18. And at 9:45, 3 boys from the 5th grade went past the bandstand on their way to the library. One of them thinks he might have seen some guy standing on the other side of the bandstand. That's our whole description, some guy. We ought to put it out on the wire. What do you think? Be on the lookout for some guy. Bannerman uttered a short laugh like a bark. At 9:55, my daughter and her friend Susan go by on their way back to school. Then about 10:05, Mary Kate Henderson came along by herself. Katrina and Sue met her going down the school steps. As they were going up, they all said hi. Dear God, Johnny muttered. He ran his hands through his hair. Last of all, 10:30, the 3 5th grade boys are coming back. One of them sees something at the bandstand. It's Mary Kate, with her leotard and her underpants yanked down, blood all over her legs, her face. Take it easy, Johnny said, and put a hand on Bannerman's arm. No, I can't take it easy, Bannerman said. He spoke almost apologetically. I've never seen anything like that. Not in 18 years of police work. He raped that little girl, and that would have been enough. Enough to, kill her. The medical examiner said the way he did it, he ruptured something and it probably would have, killed her. But then he had to go on and choke her. 9 years old and choked and left. Left on the bandstand with her underpants pulled down. Do you have violence? Yes. All right, we're going to add that to it. We're going to add sexual assault to this. Suddenly Bannerman began to cry. The tears filled his eyes behind his glasses and then rolled down his face in 2 streams. At the counter, the 2 guys from the Bridgeton Road crew were talking about the Super Bowl. Bannerman took his glasses off again and mopped his face with his handkerchief. His shoulders shook and heaved. Johnny waited, stirring his chili aimlessly. After a little while, Bannerman put his handkerchief away. His eyes were red, and Johnny thought how oddly naked his face looked without his glasses. I'm sorry, man, he said. It's been a very long day. It's all right, Johnny said. I knew I was going to do that, but I thought I could hold on until I got home to my wife. Well, I guess that was just too long to wait. You're a sympathetic ear. Bannerman slipped his glasses back on. No, you're more than that. You've got something. I'll be damned if I know just what it is, but it's something. What else have you got to go on? Nothing. I'm taking most of the heat, but the state police haven't exactly distinguished themselves. Neither has the Attorney General, Special Investigator, or our pet FBI man. The county ME has been able to type the sperm, but he's no good to us at this stage of the game. The thing that bothers me the most is the lack of hair or skin under the victim's nails. They all must have struggled, but we don't have much as a centimeter of skin. Must be on this guy's side. He hasn't dropped a button or chopping list or left a single damn track. We got a shrink from Augusta, also courtesy of the state AG, and he tells us all the guys give themselves away sooner or later. Some comfort. What if it's later? Say about 12 bodies from now. The cigarette pack at in Castle Rock, yes. Johnny stood up. Well, let's take a ride. My car? Johnny smiled a little as the wind rose, shrieking outside. On a night like this, it pays to be with a policeman, he said. The snowstorm was on its height, and it took them about an hour and a half to get over to Castle Rock in Bannerman's cruiser. It was 10:20 when they came in and through the foyer of the town office building and stamped the snow off his boots. There were half a dozen reporters in the lobby, most of them sitting on a bench under the gruesome oil portrait of some town founding father, telling each other about previous night watches. They were up and surrounding Bannerman and Johnny in no time. Sheriff Bannerman, is it true there has been a break in the case? I have nothing for you at this time, Bannerman said solidly. There's been a rumor that you've taken a man from Oxford into custody. Sheriff, is that true? No, if you folks will pardon us. But their attention had turned to Johnny, and he felt a sinking sensation in his belly as he recognized at least two faces from the press conference at the hospital. Holy God, one of them explained. You're John Smith, aren't you? Johnny felt it. Hey, that's enough from you. Johnny felt a crazy urge to take the fifth like a gangster at the Senate committee hearing. Yes, he said, that's me. The psychic guy? Another asked. Look, let us pass, Bannerman said, raising his voice. Haven't you guys got anything better to do than... According to Inside View, you're a fake, a young man in a heavy top coat said. Is that true? All I can say about that Inside View prints what they want, Johnny said. Look, really, you're denying the Inside View story? Look, I really can't say anything more. And as they went through the frosted glass door and into the sheriff's office, the reporters were racing toward the two payphones on the wall by the dog warden's office. Now the shit has truly hit the fan, Bannerman said unhappily. I swear before God I never thought they'd still be here on a night like this. I should have brought you back. I brought you in the back. Oh, didn't you know? Johnny said bitterly. We love the publicity. All us psychics are in it for the publicity. No, I don't believe that, Bannerman said. At least not for you. Not of you. Well, it's happened. Can't be helped now. But in his mind, Johnny could visualize the headline, a little extra seasoning in a pot of stew that was already bubbling briskly. Castle Rock Sheriff deputizes local psychic in strangler case. November killer to be investigated by seer. Hoax admission story, a fabrication, Smith protests. Oh my God. There are two deputies in the outer office, one of them snoozing, the other one drinking coffee and looking glumly through a pile of reports. His wife kick him out or something? Bannerman asks sourly, nodding toward the sleeper. He just got back from Augusta, the deputy said. He was a little more than a kid himself, and there was dark circles of weariness under his eyes. He glanced over at Johnny curiously. Johnny Smith? Frank Dodd. Sleeping Beauty over there is Roscoe Fisher. Johnny nodded hello. Roscoe says the AG wants the whole case, Dodd told Bannerman. He took his angry and defiant and somehow pathetic. Some Christmas present, huh? Oh, his look was angry. Bannerman put a hand on the back of Dodd's neck and shook him gently. You worry too much, Frank. Also, you're spending too much time on the case. I just keep thinking there must be something in these reports. He shrugged and then flicked them with one finger. Something. Go home and get some rest, Frank. And take Sleeping Beauty. Take Sleeping Beauty with you. All we need is for one of these photographs to get a picture of him. One of those photographers to get a picture of him. They'd run in the papers with the caption like, in Castle Rock, the intensive investigation goes on, and we'd all be out sweeping streets. Bannerman led Johnny to the private office. The desk was awash with paperwork. On the windowsill was the triptych showing Bannerman, his wife, and his daughter Katrina. His degree hung neatly framed on the wall, and beside it, in another frame, the front page of Castle Rock Hall, which had announced his election. Coffee? Bannerman asked him, unlocking the file cabinet. No, thanks. I'll stick to tea. Mrs. Sugarman guards her tea jealously, Bannerman said. Take it home with her every day. Sorry. I'd offer you a tonic, but we'd have to run the gauntlet out there again to get to the machine. Jesus Christ, I wish they'd go home. It's okay. Bannerman came back with a small clasped envelope. This is it, he said. He hesitated for a moment, then handed the envelope over. Johnny held it. Johnny held it but did not immediately open it. As long as you understand that nothing comes guaranteed, I can't promise. Sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. Bannerman shrugged tiredly and repeatedly. No venture, no gain. Johnny undid the clasp and shook an empty Marlboro cigarette out into his hand. Red and white box. He held it in his left hand and looked at the far wall. Gray wall, industrial gray wall. Red and white box, industrial gray box. Put the cigarette package in his other hand, then cupped it in both. He waited for anything to come. Nothing did. He held it longer, hoping against hope, ignoring the knowledge that when things came, they came at once. At last he handed the cigarette box back. I'm sorry, he said. No soap, huh? No. There was a perfunctory tap on the door, and Roscoe Fisher stuck his head in. He looked a bit shamefaced. Frank and I are going home, George. I guess you caught me cooping? As long as I don't catch you doing it in your cruiser, Bannerman said. Say hi to Deanie for me. You bet. Fisher glanced at Johnny for a moment and then closed the door. Well, Bannerman said, it was worth a try, I guess. I'll run you back. I want to go over to the common, Johnny said abruptly. No, that's no good. It's under a foot of snow. You can find the place, can't you? Well, of course I can, but what'll it gain? I don't know, but let's go across. Those reporters are going to follow us, Johnny, just as sure as God made little fishes. You said something about a back door. Yeah, but it's a fire door. Getting in that way is okay, but if we use it to go out, the alarm goes off. Johnny whistled through his teeth. Let him follow along then. Bannerman looked at him thoughtfully for several moments and then nodded. Okay. When they came out of the office, the reporters were up and surrounding them immediately. Johnny was reminded of a run-down kennel over in Durham, where the strange old woman kept collies. The dogs would all run out at you when you went past with your fishing pole, yapping and snarling and generally scaring the hell out of you. They would nip and not actually bite. What's up? Be right back. Okay. Do you know who did it, Johnny? Any ideas at all? Got any brainwaves, Mr. Smith? Sheriff. Was calling in a psychic your idea. Do the state police and the AG's office know about this development, Sheriff Bannerman? Do you think you can break the case, Johnny? Sheriff? Have you deputized this guy?
Give me Harley. Hurry up.
Bannerman pushed his way slowly and solidly through them, zipping his coat. No comment, no comment. Johnny said nothing at all.
Look at the bottom of this.
Uh-huh. Are you done tapping it? That's water.
No, that's actually milk.
No, it's not.
No, I can see the white. The white means milk.
No, it doesn't mean milk. It's water when it dries on from the heat of the dishwasher.
No, that's milk. I
It's
know
not.
it. Because I believe in that one.
You believe in a lot of things, Nick. Doesn't make them true. Put it on the counter. Fine, but you're going to put away the clean stuff. Or we're going to have an issue. Do you understand? Yes or no? Good Lord, my child. All of them are adults, no more teens, and I just want to strangle them sometimes. But you know what? That's what a mom wants to do sometimes. Just strangle them all. But then they make you laugh, and they make you cry, and they make you happy, and the arguments are just a moment in time that will pass. I hope. The reporters clustered in the foyer as Johnny and Bannerman went down the snowy steps. What are you watching? What are you watching? Has Nick been watching? Nick, are you interested in the movie?
Yeah, I want to watch it, but I can't.
Why?
You told me to do dishes.
Yes. Excuse you? I know you did not just throw that.
I did not. I just dropped it.
Don't drop it either.
No,
Pause.
I dropped it in the cupboard.
Pause what you're doing and go finish the movie, and then we'll do the dishes when it's done, okay?
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
The reporters clustered in the foyer as Johnny and Bannerman went down the snowy steps. It wasn't until they bypassed the cruiser and began wading across the street that one of them realized they were going to the common. Several of them ran back to for their topcoats. Those who had been dressed for outside when Bannerman and Johnny emerged from the office now floundered down the town office steps after them, calling like children. Part 9. Flashlights bobbed in the snowy dark. The wind howled, blowing snow past them this way and that in errant sheets. You're not going to be able to see a damn thing, Bannerman said. Holy shit. He was almost knocked off his feet as a reporter in a bulky overcoat and a bizarre tam o' shanter sprawled into him. Sorry, Sheriff, he said sheepishly. Slippery, forgot my galoshes. Up ahead, a yellow length of nylon rope appeared out of the gloom. Attached to it was a widely swinging sign reading "Police Investigation." You forgot your brains too, Bannerman said. Now keep back, all of you. Keep right back. Town Common's public property, Sheriff, one of the reporters cried. That's right, and this is a police business. You stay behind this rope here, or you'll spend the night in my holding cell. With the beam of his flashlight, he traced the course of the rope for them, and then held it up so Johnny could pass underneath. They walked down the slope toward the snow-mounded shapes of the benches. Behind them, the reporters gathered at the rope, pulling their few lights, so Johnny and George Bannerman walked in a dull sort of spotlight. Flying blind? Bannerman said. Well, there's nothing to see anyway, Johnny said. Is there? No, not now. I told Frank he could take the rope down any time. Now I'm glad he didn't. He didn't get around to it. You want to go over the bandstand? Not yet. Show me where the cigarette butts were. They went on and a little farther, and then Bannerman stopped. Here, he said, and shone his light on the bench that was a little more than a vague hump poking out of a drift. Johnny took off his gloves and put them in his coat pockets. Then he knelt and began to brush the snow away from the seat of the bench. Again, Bannerman was struck by the haggard pallor of the man's face. On his knees before the bench, he looked like a religious penitent, a man in desperate prayer. Johnny's hands went cold, but mostly numb. Melted snow ran off his fingers. He got down to the splintered, weather-beaten surface of the bench. He seemed to see it very clearly, almost with magnifying power. It had once been green, but now much of the paint had flaked and eroded away. 2 rusted steel bolts held the seat to the backrest. He seized the bench in both hands, and sudden weirdness flooded him. He had felt nothing so intense before, and would feel something so intense only once ever again. He stared down at the bench, frowning, gripping it tightly in his hands. It was a summer bench. How many hundreds of different people have sat here at one time or another, listening to God Bless America, to Stars and Stripes Forever? Be kind to your web-footed friends, for a duck may be somebody's mother. To the Castle Rock Cougars fight song. Green summer leaves, smoky haze of fall like a memory of corn husks, and men with rakes in mellow dusk. The thud of the big snare drum, mellow gold trumpets and trombones, school band uniforms, for a duck may be somebody's mother. Good summer people sitting here, listening, applauding, holding programs that had been designed and printed in the Castle Rock High School graphic arts shop. But this morning a killer had been sitting here. Johnny could feel him. Dark tree branches etched against a gray snow sky like runes. I am sitting here, smoking, waiting, feeling good, feeling like I, could jump right over the roof of the world and land lightly on 2 feet, humming a song, something by the Rolling Stones. Can't get that, but very clearly everything is what? All right, everything is all right, everything is gray, waiting for the snow, and I'm slick, Johnny muttered. I'm slick, I'm so slick. Bannerman leaned forward, unable to catch the words over the howling wind. What? Slick, Johnny repeated. He looked up at Bannerman, and the sheriff involuntarily took a step backward. Johnny's eyes were cool and distant, somehow inhuman. His dark hair blown wildly around his white face, and overhead the winter wind screamed through the black sky. His hands seemed welded to the bench. I'm so fucking slick, he said clearly. A triumphant smile formed on his lips. His eyes stared through Bannerman. Bannerman believed no one could be acting this or putting it on. And the most terrible part of it was, he was reminded of someone. The smile, the tone of voice. Johnny Smith was gone. He seemed to have been replaced by a human blank. And lurking behind the planes of his ordinary features, almost near enough to touch, was another face, the face of the killer, the face of someone he knew. Never catch me because I'm too slick for you. A little laugh escaped him, confident, lightly taunting. I put it on every time, and if they scratch or bite, or they don't get a bit of me, because I'm so slick. His voice rose to a triumphant, crazy shriek that competed with the wind. If you're not going to watch this show, put the dishes away, please. Competed with the wind, and Bannerman fell back another step, his flesh crawling helplessly, his balls tight and cringing against his guts. Let it stop, he thought. Let it stop now, please. Johnny bent his head over the bench. Melting snow dipped between his bare fingers. Snow, silent snow, secret snow. She put a clothespin on it so I'd know how it felt. How it felt when you got a disease. A disease from one of those nasty fuckers. They're all nasty fuckers, and they have to be stopped. Yes, stopped. Stop them. Stop. The stop. The stop. Oh my God, the stop sign. He was little again, going to school through the silent, secret snow. And there was a man looming out of the shifting whiteness. A terrible man. A terrible, black, grinning man with eyes as shiny as quarters. And there was a red stop sign clutched in one gloved hand. Him. Oh my God, don't let him get me. Mama, don't let him get me. Johnny screamed and fell away from the bench, his hands suddenly pressed to his cheeks. Bannerman crouched beside him, badly frightened. Behind the rope, the reporter stirred and murmured, "Johnny, snap out of it. Listen, Johnny." "Slick," Johnny murmured. He looked up at Bannerman with hurt, frightened eyes. In his mind, he still saw the black shape with the shiny quarter eyes looming out of the snow. His crotch throbbed.
You see my glass?
Did you take them off down here or upstairs?
You know, that's the thing I don't remember.
Has anybody seen an extra pair of glasses laying around?
I have no idea. I'm trying to do this.
Look on the floor, the mantle,
I can't get to the
and look upstairs, please.
You mean you want to annoy me?
Look upstairs, please. What?
I'm trying to get to all that, but all that is in the way.
I don't understand. Give me
In
a
other
second,
words,
guys.
I can't do the thing.
We will find the glasses. In his mind, he still saw the black shape with the shiny quarter eyes looming out of the snow. His crotch throbbed dully from the pain of the clothespin the killer's mother had made him wear. He hadn't been the killer then. Oh no, not an animal, not a poss bag, or a shit bag, or whatever Bannerman had called him. He'd only been He'd only been a scared little boy with a clothespin on his. "Help him get up," he muttered. "Help me get up." Bannerman helped him to his feet. "The bandstand now," Johnny said. "No, I think we ought to go, Johnny." Johnny pushed past him blindly and began to flounder toward the bandstand. A big circular shadow up ahead. It bulked and loomed in the darkness. The death place. Bannerman ran and caught up to him. "Johnny, who is it? Do you know who?" "You never found any scraps of tissue under their fingernails because he was wearing a raincoat," Johnny said. He panted the words out. "A raincoat with a hood. A slick vinyl raincoat. You go back over the reports. And you'll see. It was raining or snowing every time. They clawed at him, all right. They fought him. Sure they did. But their fingers just slipped and slid over it." "Who, Johnny, who?" I don't know, but I'm going to find out." He stumbled over the lowest of the 6 steps leading up to the bandstand, fumbling for his balance, and would have lost it if Bannerman had not gripped his arm. Then they were up on the stage. The snow was thin here, a bare dusting, kept off by the conical roof. Bannerman trained his flashlight beam on the floor, and Johnny dropped to his hands and knees and began to crawl slowly across it. His hands were bright red. Bannerman thought that they must be like chunks of raw meat by now. Johnny stopped suddenly and sniffed like a dog on point. "Here," he muttered. "He did it right here."
Seems like you didn't clean up all the shards. Put down one.
"Where?
Window shards?
Where?"
What?
Between the couch and the chair.
"That's the thing we did. We vacuumed. Did you get it out?
Yes.
Did you throw it out?"
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we vacuumed. All right? Do you need a Band-Aid?
I need a pad.
A what?
Like a gauze pad. Like,
Why do you need a gauze pad?
no, cotton. Like,
There you go.
cotton
And don't forget Neosporin's in there. Images and textures and sensations flooded in. The copper taste of excitement, the possibility of being added to it. The girl was squirming, trying to scream. He had covered her mouth with one gloved hand. Awful excitement. Never catch me. I'm the invisible man. "Is it dirty enough for you now, Mama?" Johnny began to moan, shaking his head back and forth. Sound of clothes ripping, warmth, something flowing, blood, semen, urine. He began to shudder all over.
Baby, go
His
away.
hair
Go
hung
away.
in his face. "Phoebe, That's enough. Wait, what is on your foot? Is that hair or is that glass?
It's the cotton.
Oh, okay. Because I can see a string of it. Phoebe, stop! No, you come here. You leave her be. Thank you. All right. He began to shudder all over. His hair hung in his face, his smiling, open face, caught inside the circular border of the raincoat's hood, as my hands closed around the neck at the moment of orgasm, and squeeze, and squeeze, and squeeze. The strength, stop, sit, good girl. The strength left his arms as the images began to fade. He slipped forward, now lying on the stage full length, sobbing. When Bannerman touched his shoulder, he cried out and tried to scramble away, his face crazy with fear. Then, little by little, it loosened. He put his head back against the waist-high bandstand railing and closed his eyes. Shudders raced through his body like whippets. His pants and coat were sugared with snow. I know who it is, he said. Part 10. 15 minutes later, Johnny sat in Bannerman's inner office again, stripped to his shorts and sitting as close as he could to the portable electric heater. He still looked cold and miserable, but he had stopped shaking. Sure you don't want some coffee? Johnny shook his head. I can't abide the stuff. Johnny, Bannerman sat down. Do you really know something? I know who killed them. You would have gotten him eventually. You were too close to it. You were just too close to it. You've even seen him in his raincoat, that shiny, all-over raincoat, because he crosses the kids in the morning. He has a stop sign on a stick, and he crosses the kids in the morning. Bannerman looked up at him, thunderstruck. Are you talking about Frank? Frank Dodd? You're nuts! Frank Dodd kills them, Johnny said. Frank Dodd killed them all. Bannerman looked as though he didn't know whether to laugh at Johnny or to deal him a good, swift kick. That's the craziest goddamn thing I've ever heard, he said finally. Frank Dodd's a fine officer and a fine man. He's crossing over next November to run for municipal chief of police, and he'll do it with my blessing. Amusement, aired contempt. Frank's 25. That means he would have had to have started this crazy shit when he was just 19. He lives at home, very quietly with his mother. He isn't very well, hypertension, thyroid, and a semi-diabetic condition. Johnny, you put your foot in the bucket. Frank Dodd is no murderer. I'll shake my life on it. The murder stopped for 2 years, Johnny said. Where was Frank Dodd then? Was he in town? Bannerman turned toward him, and now the tired amusement had left his face, and he only looked hard and angry. I don't want to hear any more about this. You were right the first time. You're nothing but a fake. Well, you got your press coverage, but that doesn't mean I have to listen to you malign a good officer, a man you think of as your son, Johnny said quietly. Bannerman's lips thinned, and a lot of the color that had risen in his cheeks during their time outside now faded out of his face. He looked like a man who had been punched low. Then it passed, and his face was expressionless. Get out of here, he said. Get one of your reporter friends to give you a ride home. You can hold a press conference on your way. But I swear to holy God, if you mention Frank Dodd's name, I'll come for you and I'll break your neck. Understood? Sure. My buddies from the press, Johnny shouted at him suddenly. That's right. Didn't you see me answering all their questions, posing for their pictures, and making sure they got my good side, making sure they spelled my name right? Bannerman looked startled, then hard again. Lower your voice. No, I'll be goddamned if I will, Johnny said, and his voice rose even higher in pitch and volume. I think you forgot who called who. I'll refresh your recollection for you. It was you calling me. That's how eager I was to get over here. That doesn't mean you're... Johnny walked over to Bannerman, pointed his index finger like a pistol. He was several inches shorter and probably 80 pounds lighter, but Bannerman backed up a step, as he had done on the common. Johnny's cheeks had flushed a dull red. His lips were drawn back slightly from his teeth. No, you're right. Your calling me doesn't mean shit in the tin bucket, he said. But you don't want it to be Dodd, do you? It can be somebody else. Then we'll at least look into it. But it can't be good old Frank Dodd because Frank's upstanding. Frank takes care of his mother. Frank looks up to good old Sheriff George Bannerman. Oh, Frank's bloody Christ down from the cross, except when he's raping and strangling old ladies and little girls. And it could have been your daughter, Bannerman. Don't you understand? It could have been your own daughter. Bannerman hit him. At the last moment, he pulled the punch, but it was still hard enough to knock Johnny backward. He stumbled over the leg of the chair and then sprawled on the floor. Blood trickled from his cheek where Bannerman's police academy ring had grazed him. You had that coming, Bannerman said, but there was no real conviction in his voice. It occurred to him that for the first time in his life, he had hit a cripple, or the next thing to a cripple. Johnny's head felt light and full of bells. His voice seemed to belong to someone else, a radio announcer or a B-movie actor. You ought to get down on your knees and thank God that he really didn't have and leave any clues, because you would have overlooked them, feeling like you do about Dodd. And then you could have held yourself responsible for Mary Kate Henderson's death as an accessory. That is nothing but a damnable lie, Bannerman said slowly and clearly. I'll arrest my own brother, if he was a guy doing this. Get up off the floor. I'm sorry I hit you. He helped Johnny to his feet and looked at the scrape on his cheek. I'll get the first aid kit and put some iodine on it. Forget it, Johnny said. The anger had left his voice. I guess I kind of sprang it on you, didn't I? I'm telling you, it can't be Frank. You're not a publicity hound, okay? I was wrong about that. Heat of the moment, all right? Okay? But your vibes in your astral plane, or whatever it is, sure gave you a bum steer this time. Then check, Bannerman said. He caught Bannerman's eyes in his own and held them. Check it out. Show me I got it wrong, he swallowed. Check out the times and dates against Frank's work schedule. Can you do that? Grudgingly, Bannerman said. The time cards in the back of the closet there go back 14 or 15 years. I guess I could check it out. I could check it. Then do it. Mister, he paused. Johnny, if you knew Frank, you'd laugh at yourself. I mean it. It's not just me. You ask anybody. If I'm wrong, I'll be glad to admit it. This is crazy, Bannerman muttered. But he went to the storage closet where the old time cards were kept and opened the door. Part 11. 2 hours passed. It was now nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. Johnny had called his father and told him he would find a place to sleep in Castle Rock. The storm had leveled off at a single furious pitch, and the driving back would be next to impossible. Are you done? Are you done? You need to stop. I am almost done. You don't need to sit there and bark away. Maybe I'm not almost done. I might have to pause. Might have to end for the day. So I'm not quite sure. My puppy wants out. This is part 11. You know what? Why don't we stop there? Because I'm going to finish this tonight. I've got a puppy who needs out. I have a husband who wants to eat. And I do have my kitchen to clean. So we've done an hour and a half. And we've done quite a bit for today. So tonight we will continue with part 11 of chapter 16. And hopefully it won't be so chaotic. I do apologize. I get overwhelmed. And I do have mental health, so that adds in, and I have to calm myself and just talk. And when I pause, like when I mute, it's because I need to talk to them, but I don't, if I happen to raise my voice, I don't want to raise it in your guys' ears. So, and I do argue with my youngest son a lot, unfortunately. So, I am going to make sure everything was done there. I'm going to let my puppy out. I'm going to feed my husband. And then tonight around 7 o'clock, we'll try to do some more. Okay? So I do thank you guys for bearing with me and sticking with me. I know the chaos can be a bit much, but chaos is part of my life, unfortunately. So, it is what it is. But I want to appreciate you guys, or say thank you, and I appreciate you guys for sticking with me. I really do. I love y'all so much. If you haven't followed, please do, and that way you know when I'm reading. And yes, are you ready to go outside? All right, give me a second. I have to go. But thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure. Love y'all. Bye.